Face Forward is bringing socially conscious artists together. So throughout the year, we have a lot of programs and gatherings for our artists to come together and reflect inwards and outwards towards the community about what does it mean to be socially conscious and how we can use our art for social change, which is why this topic is so relevant to us as a community in Face Forward. And there really isn't any better way to answer it other than talking to these wonderful people. So,
thank you, Shar. My name is Abide. Also, my mom called me David. You know, there's a lot of Davids of us out there, so I go by Abide in the hip hop community. I think I'm the only one who's called Abide, so it's an easy name for people to remember. I'm a dancer mostly. I dabble in other art forms as well, but hip hop arts is my main thing. And I think I've been doing this for like, about 15 years, about that long. And I'm from here, born and raised in Minneapolis, traveled around, lived in Seattle for a little while, lived in North Carolina for a little while, came back here because I love Minnesota, and I'm really happy to be part of Face Forward.
Hi, my name is Trung. I'm a relatively new Face Forward artist. I am an illustrator and a comic artist. I was born in the Philippines. I'm Vietnamese, so I was born in a refugee camp. And so the Storm Cayenne, it's kind of a really close personal tie to my family. Yeah, I'm glad to be here. Face Forward has been really awesome for me, and I hope you enjoy this dialogue today.
I'm Chitra. I'm a contemporary Indian dancer in a company called Nanya Dance Theater here, and looking forward to this dialogue and really discussing change and justice and socially conscious art. And I'm excited to be a part of Face Forward. This is my first season with Face Forward, and yeah.
My name is Seymour Perspective. That is my birth name. You could look up my mom, Mrs. Perspective. She's a famous writer and educator on the west side of St. Paul. That's not true. I'm a hip hop artist, I'm a poet, I'm an audio engineer, I'm an artist really before and within everything I do. Talk a lot about social justice and identity and culture within hip hop and spoken word as an educator, and yeah, I do my thing, I gets down.
Hello, my name is Renee Copeland. I'm a dancer, choreographer. I also dance with Nanya Dance Theater with Chitra. And a singer-songwriter, poet, make sounds. And I'm also very excited to be part of this dialogue tonight.
Hi, I'm Tasha Will, and I am working in the healing and performing arts. My healing arts work is in energy medicine and developmental psychotherapy. I'm also a choreographer and performer in movement. Some of the themes that I'm working with in both of those realms is intimacy, somatic, visceral experience of your own body and how it connects to others, and the personal narrative, creating affinity between people.
awesome. Thank you so much for being here. We're really excited to have you. And I think we're going to right away delve into the reason why we're here today. So we're all artists in this society in the Twin Cities, and my question for you is, what is the role of an artist in society in general? Do you think it's important to use art for social change, and do you think it's effective?
So art is a map to me, and we're all coming from these different areas within this map, this big kind of umbrella map that is art. We have dance, we have spoken word, we have the visual art. And the way art, for me, plays into our world is it brings that light, it brings breath, and people will have a certain disposition to one of those forms of art. And so it's our responsibility to bring that form to them. You know, some people are going to always be drawn to visual art. And then as we feel that alignment with social change, social issues, and we get to bring that into our art. And so when they're looking for the lightness that art brings into the world, they're getting context. And art is, in its nature, it's breaking the idea of being complacent because it's asking you to engage. You can't not engage with it in some way. So then we bring our responsibility into that, and we get to bring our issues into that.
I'll go off of that. For me, I'm in art to promote social justice, community, and especially for me personally, queer and feminist representations within art. And so representation is a huge word, and it makes me think of the role of artists as we keep running into these devastating news stories. I continues to think about media and its role in symbol making, and how that is our same privilege, be it fragile. We are symbol makers, really active public symbol makers, and we need to protect. The word is protect metaphor, especially metaphor and symbolism. So ways that we do that is representing our narratives that aren't being shown, our narratives that are being squashed under, swept away, rewritten, overwritten. So if anybody wants to go off of that, that's something that's been on my mind lately because we've been having some really horrible stories thrown at us all the time.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that. But I don't think that art can create any social change. That's not true. Wouldn't be here if that was the case. No, we do have a lot of messed up messages coming at us consistently. And I think that as artists who are projecting other messages in the world, I think it's really important for us to project messages that represent our identity, our identities, where we come from, the communities that we're a part of, to the fullest in those messages that we represent. Because either way, people are going to get something from, the things that we represent. And in hip hop particularly, so many young people kind of grow up with an unhealthy idea of what is cool, to the point where when I was coming up, the hip hoppers that I was listening to, or that I heard, were talking about represent, but it was on some ill shit. It was on some stuff that was not very cool or healthy for communities and for people of color specifically. So to represent something broader than those singular stories, with hip hop, with poetry, with our visual art, with whatever it is vital. It's vital for us as artists and as community members, because we're all part of multiple communities wherever we go, even if we're introverts.
I totally agree with you, Adam, because I think you're also touching on something I wanted to say, which is that as an artist, you have a responsibility, and that I feel like people need to embrace that responsibility because there's power in art, there's accessibility in art, there's social change that's inspired by art, and so the ill shit that you were talking about, like people need to check themselves and understand the responsibility of being an artist, which is why it's easy to be turned off by certain art and really attracted to other art. And so we really need to be conscious as a society, like in terms of who we're supporting, the integrity of the person that's creating the product and their process, and also, I guess, being really connected to the societies and the histories that you're a part of as an artist. It's part of your spectrum.
I think especially artists growing up in the Twin Cities, we talk a lot about identity and we talk a lot about representation and all the different facets of ourselves that make up who we are. And coming from academic context in particular, if we're talking about identities, it's going to sound like a laundry list. It's always like, I am cis, I am male, I am Asian, I am queer, I am all of these things. And those things are all like pertinent parts of a person's identity, but it's also gonna come off like a bullet point. And I think that art is a means of participation in a community that is unique in that it gets to address all of those things simultaneously as a presence. And it's really, really amazing to be able to do that and not have to apologize or qualify each little bullet point that you make in the conversation. Like in the most broad context, art is, and I keep saying it in all these other conversations, but art is a persisting moment in time. If we participate in it, it just lets people know that we are in fact paying attention and we're reacting and we're participating. That's why I think it's important.
Well, I think in the city we have a lot of artists, and I'm really blessed to be part of a city like Minneapolis that has so much openness to, I think, different forms of expression in relatively a small city. In the grand scheme of our country, it's one of the smaller large cities, and so I think that art has the ability to speak. When we talk about process and product, the product of the artist sometimes is not tangible. Sometimes it's ethereal. It's just spirit. You're producing spirit, and I think as a hip hop artist, we go back to these core principles that hip hop is founded on, which is like peace, love, unity, and having fun. And I don't think there's many rules against a lot of those things. And I think as I do my dance, if I go around, I work with youth a lot, with kids, and try to teach those principles, that spiritual content. Teach that to our youth because they, I feel, are our future. And so if we can take our art, which is very attractive, and give that to somebody, especially a young person, those young people can then grow into themselves, and through the practice of art, through the diving in and immersing themselves in a form of art, can gain a better sense of self or identity through the art. They can kind of build up themselves through their art, understand about who they are as a person, and then with that understanding go out and really do what they're placed on the planet to do. Each of us, we only have like a really short amount of time as we're passing through this planet. We have this body, and we're able to use this body to do, great things and terrible things. And so I think if we're able to harness our body and really control it and understand all the different facets of our being and unleash some of those creative things inside of us and use those things to create beautiful things in the world, peaceful things, loving things that bring about unity, that bring about a positive experience for more people. I think that's what we're here to do. I think as an artist, I'm happy to be, to be able to express through dance and through movement and through sound and through visual representations and try to put all those things into it so that it could tell a story. It could tell that fabric that weaves us all together, that can hold us all together, the unity that just, it exists. But some people, especially the television, you turn on the television and you see all these news stories and they're saying, so-and-so crashed into the lake and maybe she shouldn't have been driving with that many kids in her car. Well, that may be true, but there's probably a much more loving way of explaining that situation. So before I get off on a tangent, I'm gonna give this back to you.
Thank you. So I'm hearing a lot about the place of an artist in terms of connection with the society artists are embedded in. I'm hearing about the integrity of the art. I'm hearing about the importance of creating symbols that are true to narratives. But I want to challenge you a little bit because the truth is that socially conscious art is struggling. The truth is that a lot of artists that I know that define themselves as socially conscious are struggling to pay rent. They serve burgers by day or night, and the rest of the time they work on the art. So it is struggling. There's a difficulty to even those artists that we think about that are more popular in the Twin Cities that would consider themselves socially conscious are struggling financially. The mainstream media for some reason does not find socially conscious art sexy, although we do in Fixed Forward, definitely. But why is it struggling so much? Why do artists find it hard to keep that integrity and that connection and make a living and make it to mainstream media in the same way that other artists that might not have that integrity keep it?
I've been on a journey to figure this out too, because then what does it mean to struggle? Like, what is it that we're seeking, right? Because it's a question of really redefining where we're trying to go. Are we trying to be in the mainstream? Are we trying to redefine what mainstream means? Because that's where I want to align myself in terms of my personal work. But also, like, the struggling is if we're talking about financially, like struggling in terms of process, or in terms of like organizationally, like there's so many layers to what that struggling could mean, you know? And I think first and foremost, we need to define what struggling means for ourselves, like our personal journeys. And then we can tackle big questions like what it means to struggle as an art organization, because what is the mission, the vision of that organization, you know? So we got to start with ourselves first.
And go along with that, what does success mean? And what does that look like? And how do we weigh what's happening around us and how far we've gotten or whatever we've accomplished against our vision of success? Back to the original question, I think the reason why, there's a perception that struggles is, in mainstream, like you said, is that it is a pushback from all of the bullshit messages that we receive on the daily, I do think that we almost develop allergies to truth in our culture and in our society, so that if somebody's kind of caught up in the stream of that mainstream, they hear something very real and it sounds off and weird because they've learned, the way that we communicate with the world and the way that we hear and take in information, we're always learning how to live our lives and how to be who we are wherever we go. Whether we're little kids or whether we're old, we're always refining our idea of what it means to be a person in the world. And all of those messages are contributing to that. Every bit of information, right? Every data is contributing to the idea of who we are in the world. And when we're pushing against that, when something new comes in, we're like, oh, wait, what is that? Like, oh, I don't like that. That's weird. How many times do you hear somebody say that was weird, when they're being introduced to something to the left of the type of thing that they're used to hearing, that they've keyed in on, that they're comfortable with. And I think that's a big part. I think we're presenting something that people grow allergic to on the daily.
I just kind of want to touch on performing arts in particular. There's an aspect I find with dance, just to do it, just to have that experience of performance, that exchange with the audience and dancing. I'm just going to speak from that perspective and experience. That in itself can be so radical. We haven't even talked about what the body is, who it is, how it's dancing, where it's coming from, but just that is kind of already existing outside of the capitalist zone of sorts. The exchange is, like you're saying, about the ephemeral quality of things. So I just kind of want to invest us with that power, because so often we're in these rehearsals and we're giving, if we chiseled it down, we're getting $1 an hour or something, and at the end of it, there's so much glory, but the work, we all know what it is. But that's the kind of generosity that I see across genres when I go into making music. And I'm in a recording studio and this whole band shows up and learns my songs in an hour, and I give them hummus and pita and they say, where did you get this? Where's it from? It's so good. Thank you, thank you, thank you. They're just thanking me profusely. I'm like,
you guys just did all this for nothing, you know, what is this? So that's the act of the art. It's already outside of that other exchange where it's like, I give you this, you give me this, it's so material, and I'm done, goodbye, you know, I got what I want. It's something else, it's bigger. And so then it's understanding that all of that giving is also a receiving. So it's this kind of community that we're so close to tapping into. But as we continue to try to engage with our family members or other pressures of some type of 9 to 5, we get unsure, we get uncertain. And so I think that's what you're kind of pressing on, is how we.
So you can have a career in the arts, or you can get a job that is an art job, but being an artist is a vocation, and it's a responsibility. And we can't always get paid for responsibility, because that's what we have to show up with. We have to be in integrity to that. So then, and I personally am coming to some kind of breakthrough around all of this. How can I live fully in my vocation? How can I compose my life so that each piece of my life, the money-making piece, the art piece, can be interconnected so that this human can live my vocation? And that's being an artist.
So I've been working with a lot of like kind of younger visual artists, and within the framework of my artistic context, it's very, very easy to commodify. Comic books are something that are really popular in a lot of really mainstream ways nowadays. And so it's kind of difficult to engage people in a way that can get them to understand the creation of an image and the creation of a narrative as something that is necessarily conscious. Because when you are an artist and you work really closely in communities, like I consider myself to be a visual artist, but sometimes I'm just an illustrator. Sometimes it's about the craft as opposed to the art behind it. And people will try to, and you will sometimes have to avail yourselves to people who want you just for your craft and not for the perspective or the experience behind it. And it's really difficult because art is a vocation. Art is something that has intrinsic value, and then you do something that accesses this extrinsic value and it feels hollow because it's not something that you feel genuinely, and that's really tough. But at the same time, I do consider, and I guess this isn't really like a helpful answer if you're an artist who is looking to sustain yourself with your art, but I feel like to be a socially conscious artist, you have to be a participant. And the moment that you gain a lot of capital, that you have a lot of money, we can't divorce ourselves from the problems of our communities. And I think it's really great that artists have this sort of like, well, like, not great that we're like poor all the time, but like, you know, but that we have access to this space that's very real and very genuine because we have to rely on our communities and we participate in that discourse more so than just this unfeeling, unthinking craft that's about sense and not about critical analysis about whatever it is that we're doing. We're artists, we're going to be the bearers of bad news.
I really like that, what you said. I think that art is the voice of the people, and I think a lot of people don't have the skills to voice their opinions in the same way or in a compelling way, the way an artist would. So I really like what Trung is saying, like if you're, connected with your community, that fuels your art. And in so many words, that's kind of what I took out of that. Like that socially conscious piece is what drives us forward in a lot of ways, in many ways. I think also that it's very important to be socially conscious because, as I said, there's somebody who's out there who may be thinking, oh man, I just wish I have this idea. I just wish I could tell somebody that this thing needs to change. I'm really fed up with my local representative, and I don't know how to say anything about it. Well, maybe Trung's gonna make just a little poster, and it'll say something on it, and then it'll be like, that makes people think. That might affect the way somebody chooses to go out and vote or not, or that might affect the way somebody will get involved with their school, or get involved with their local community organization, or something like that. The music that we play, a lot of the music that we play has like very powerful lyrics in and behind it, and like most of the stuff that you hear on mainstream radio, thanks to Clear Channel, has a very limited message. Many of the songs, if you look and break down the content of the songs, you'll find most of the content falls under like a few categories. Is it sex? Is it money? Is it just affluence? Is it drugs and violence? Like these few categories that they found sell well. So let's push it out there. So like we have they have their community. Okay, so they have a group of people that is deciding what is going to be pushed out on our network, on our on our property. We have this stuff that's going to be sent out to what we have. But we have our communities, and I think that that as artists, we need to push for that local connection, and not mass produce everything. There may be some money in mass producing things, but as far as like art is concerned, I don't want everyone to feel the same art all the time. I feel like the variety of life is what makes the difference in location beautiful. The variety in life is what makes each individual important, and not like a stamp or a cookie cutter. Everyone has to do art this way, or everyone has to do it that way. So like pushing for that local may mean that there's not as much money, for the artist, but I think it's enough to live on. And I love what was said earlier too about like just doing it for the love. We don't have to get paid; we'd do it anyway. And then if we do get paid, that helps us to do it more fully. It helps us to find that balance of physical and and mental and spiritual. That sort of balance. We need the physical. We need to eat to live, but we also need each other. We need that community. We need to connect with each other. That's just as important and life-giving, I think, as the food that we need.
Thank you so much. I'm hearing the word community a lot here. And Trung, I love what you said about the fact that you can't divorce your community. I want you, if you can, to speak a little bit more about that. Why is it important to have a community? Is it important, first of all, to have a community of artists? Why is it important for us as artists to be embedded in our communities? And how do you get embedded in your communities? Renee, I know from an earlier conversation that we had, if you don't mind me quoting you, you were talking about how, a lot of the time when an artist gets to a new city, they have to kind of fend for themselves, and there's a lot of competition, and you have to be independent, and you got to push forward. Whereas what we're trying to do is more to help each other, like you were saying. I'll record a CD if you give me hummus or whatever have you. But there's a different kind of exchange, and I'm wondering, why do you think it's important? If it's important, how do you sustain it, and how do you bring it back outside of this into the local community? Anyone who's willing to take the question.
This might sound kind of like duh, but why not have a community? How far can you actually get? This is a little bit like the tortoise and the hare in a way. Like, how far can you get by yourself? What kind of perspective can you have about yourself by yourself? The people around you, they might move slower than you can go. You can be very ambitious by yourself, but you won't arrive to your destination, wherever that may be, with the riches that you're going to arrive with if you have a community around you. And maybe you will arrive faster because you have this support network with you all the time. When you forget about your vocation, when you forget that you have this work, when you forget all of the special things about yourself that are individual to you, and there's no one else like you, you reach over and there's someone else there to remind you. Because we can't all forget at the same time. We stand in remembrance of each other. And that's why we have community.
I guess it's important to really define what community means. Like, what is your community as an artist? Like, really, what is your community? So you have to examine it. You have to examine how you're an active participant, as you're saying, within the community that you have. in terms of how you're creating your work, how you're sustaining your work, and how are you giving back to that community. So I'm already on board, but I just wonder how many artists really examine that, and how we're giving and taking, you know, in terms of our integrity of that process. And also, I wonder, in my personal journey, I'm just thinking like of safe spaces, because we build this community and we have to create a safe space where we can critique and make ourselves better, right? And the community needs to be inclusive, but it also needs to be exclusive, right? Because we have all these different, we can't be so open and abstract about this idea of community. Like it's in circles, right? It's in different circles, and they need to be concentric, like they need to work within each other. So I'm kind of digressing, like my mind is really racing right now. But it's really complicated, because we can't just use this idea of community as a very simple thing. It's really complicated. We need to examine it. We need to, again, do the work to be a really active participant in it.
For me, community is really important in terms of art making, because as a visual artist and like as a comic artist, I spend all day like sitting at a desk, and I can hide behind, like I can hide my identity behind a piece of paper, behind an image, and I can put it out there, and if you didn't know who I was, like you wouldn't have any idea about the context that I brought to it unless I made it, fairly obvious. And to be able to participate in a community like this, like Face Forward, where a lot of different artists from a lot of different disciplines get together, we have this amazing opportunity to learn each other's different languages. Because art is all these kinds of different codes, and it's amazing to me. It blows my mind that I had never considered before going to a spoken word show that someone could reveal something about their context based on the way that a vowel rolls off of their tongue, you know? Or the way that a dancer exists as a body in their entirety, like their entire physical self, completely politicized and there for us. As a means of expression, that's amazing. And I wouldn't ever be able to think about things that way or have access to that if I were to work within like my own very insular visual arts circle where I can sit behind a computer. So there's that. But within terms of building community, we often find that, especially in terms of safe spaces, that community is there to kind of hold each other accountable. Like we have to be there to like check each other when we're being problematic, when we're creating unsafe spaces. And that's something that we all keep in the back of our minds. But I think in addition to that, we also bear witness to each other. Whenever we create art that contains narratives, and whenever we think about things like television shows or like movies or books or things like that, we see the same heroes and the same characters and the same kinds of tropes of beauty all of the time. And it took me a long time to figure out that that was kind of problematic. Like I would look at my drawings and I'd be like, oh, they all look like white people. And I'm like, I didn't see myself in my own work. And how horrible is it that you can't exist in your own imagination, you know? And so when we exist in a community with each other, we can be there to say that, yes, like you exist, and I can validate the way, like, you know, where you are and where you stand, and the work that you do, that you put out into the community. So you're not alone and you're not working insularly anymore.
Wow. I got a story to tell. So our breakers, we have a really tight-knit B-boy and B-girl community. B-boys and B-girls are breakers, or sometimes called breakdancers. So a couple years ago, we had this practice spot up in Brooklyn Park or Brooklyn Center, I can't remember. And we're having this session, everyone's kind of dancing, somebody came in and they put their phone down. And it was in such a place where it's kind of like a community center, so people could come and go as they please, you know, people walk in, walk out, no big deal. Everyone's kind of part of the group, so nobody worries about their stuff. Well, this young gentleman walks in off the street, and he snatches a phone, and he takes off. Okay, he must not have known where he was, because like 16 b-boys start running after this dude. They like take off out of the building and chase him down. Okay, as they're chasing, like 10 more start running out there. Where did everyone go? So and so took so and so's phone. Oh, let's go get him. So like now we have like 25 people chasing this one guy down the street in Brooklyn Center, and a squad car just happens to be rolling by. Squad car stops. They're like, "Hey, what's going on?" It's like a mob. They see this going on, and they're like, "That dude stole his phone." So they turn on the lights. They try to chase him down. The guy runs into an apartment building, takes off his hooded sweatshirt and leaves it in the apartment building with the phone. Ducks out we figured ducks out the back of the building and leaves. So they didn't catch him or anything, but one of our B-boys got his phone back. All right, and that's the power of community in a very small way. All right, this guy walked in. He thought, "Oh man, look there's a phone. I could probably sell that for some money, or I could whatever, like reset it and use it for myself." Well, that's not happening in a place where you know everybody. That's only something that you can do to somebody who you don't know. So everyone in that room feels like, hey, that's our phone. We share this experience together. We share that property too. So if our brother, if his phone is missing, then I can't call them. So it just kind of happened that way. So I don't know. I just thought that was a good example of how community works, and just like we have each other's backs. We're there. As things come up, as things arise in life, joys and struggles, we suffer together and we celebrate together. Community is very important that way. And I think that as far as like creating space financially for your art, I think if it wasn't for all the people who were like-minded and pushed for creating a space for the artists, nobody would be making money as artists. It takes that community to kind of build that that demand. All right. Once people see it, and once people have an understanding of what the benefits are of this art, then demand is created, and then people with money say, "Hey, I want that," and so they're willing to share what they have, which is their money, and we're willing to share what we have, which is our art. And we can create that balance and that expanding the community out. To reach more people, because I think certain people, I wouldn't say everyone who has money might feel this way, but certain people that I know who have money, what they don't have is a lot of community. They have a few people that they know and they trust, and then they're able to use their money to get the other things that they need. Whereas myself, I'm living below the poverty line. I got 2 kids, I'm married. We don't have a lot of stuff, but people give us stuff because they love us. And that's part of our community. These people who have, they'll share with us, and I'll share it with other people too. They give us a bunch of baby clothes, my baby goes out of them in 2 years, I give them on to someone else. So that's like just how the community kind of works. I think it's a good thing, connected with the people that we're around.
I just wanted to add something. Someone told me once that art isn't complete until someone witnesses it, experiences it. And some people say that, well, I don't do it for anybody else. And I kind of think that's bullshit. Because you make art to create, to put something into the world because you have something to say. Particularly artists who are working for any kind of social change. Social means people. You make art because you need people to talk to, you need people to listen, you need people to listen to and learn from and respond to with your art and with your heart and soul. I mean, we're trying to communicate on the deepest level as artists. And my phone is ringing, so speaking of communication. But that's real, and that's my piece.
I guess what I'm hearing a lot here is holding accountable, holding in place, supporting each other. And I think that is something we talk a lot about in Face Forward, and the need to create a safe space where we can do that, where we can share experiences, share challenges, share ideas, challenge each other. And you all spoke to that. I have a lot of other questions to ask this artist, but unfortunately we're running out of time. And this is just the tip of the iceberg of a very, very long and deep dialogue that we're having within our community and out of it. And I will take one question.
So just in thinking about like listening to what you guys are saying, I've been thinking a lot about privilege and just what it means to be an artist. So I'm an educator, also an artist, but an educator by vocation. And you know, I think a lot about access and privilege has the ability to do what, you know, and we're talking about community. And I feel like, you know, I work in North Minneapolis, and I feel like there's a lot of people that are very talented. Like when you said that not everybody has the talent, like I actually think that that's a really whack mentality. And I just think about like a lot of people have the talent, but not everybody has the access or the capability to do art, right? Like I can't, and I'm not talking about myself specifically. I have my own privileges and I own them. But not everybody who is an artist has the ability to say like I can't work in these ways, these sort of societal ways, and just, you know, struggle all the time. Because my life, I was born in the struggle. So I just wanted to like bring that up because that was really kind of bothering me.
Thank you.
I just want to say that that's a great, valid question. You know, a lot of art comes from struggle, is born from struggle, and is part of a lineage of struggle that we're trying to, particularly with social change. I definitely think it's important for us as artists to recognize the privilege and to say, what are my privileges here? Do I have the opportunity to struggle and to get into a struggle, but that I kind of have a safety valve I can pull? I think you have to be that real with yourself, otherwise you're not authentically contributing to a community or the multiple communities that you're a part of, that you're trying to build something with. I think you have to acknowledge the privilege because we really need to leverage the privilege everywhere we can, you know? And I think to ignore it and say, well, privilege. You know, some people get freaked out. There's probably people here a little tense when we say privilege. And it's like, ooh, we're gonna talk about that? Do we always have to talk about that? You know? Like, and we kind of need to, whenever it comes up, we need to face it and be honest about who we are, where we come from, on a spectrum of privilege and power. And I could talk about this all day. I have business cards, we can talk about it. I'll come to your class, whatever. You can send me an email, we can talk. I'm gonna get a beer after this, we can talk. So yeah.
I mean, it is just the tip of the iceberg, and I think that's a very valid point and something that we need to talk about it. So I do invite you to talk to Face Forward artists or anyone else here. We can get just like a round of appreciation for these wonderful speakers.